Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, the next session is titled Smart Trade, Transport and Logistics Solutions, moderated by Mr. Richard Quest from CNN. Please welcome him.
All right, so time for us to get to grips with the issue of trade and particularly the relationship with India. Now, I do urge you, if you're joining us now, do come a little bit closer, please. Do come a bit closer. I don't like to see too many empty rows. Don't worry, we'll bring you on in a minute. Yes, come on in. Come forward. Sorry? Oh, don't worry about protocol. We're long since past protocol by now. You don't mind, do you? You don't mind? You don't mind people coming a bit closer? There we go. That's better. All right, so our guests for this next panel on India are fascinating because we're going to talk about the need of smart trade, transport, and logistics solutions. First of all, His Excellency Sultan Bin Sulayem. Coming in, Sultan. Where are you? Come and take the seat next to me. Sujoy Bose, the Chief Executive of the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund of India. Good to see you, sir. And Ramesh Abhishek, the Secretary of Department, Industrial Policy and Promotion, Ministry of Commerce and Industry in India. That's a very long title.
Well, it is. We do a lot of work.
That's a very long title. It used to be said those who have the longest titles. Well, tell me. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Let's turn. You don't need this, do you?
I don't need this.
Right. Let us begin, first of all, with you, Sultan. The relationship between DP World and what you're doing in India at the moment. Just give us an overview.
Well, we are a major port operator in India. We are located in 6 locations. The first one is in Mundra, in Gujarat. Second one is Nhava Sheva, 2 terminals, Mumbai. Then in Cochin, Kerala. And then in Chennai. And then Visakhapatnam. And then we have one concession which we haven't yet built in Kalpi.
So you've been in India for how long?
10 years.
India has changed, Secretary, dramatically, hasn't it, in the last 5 years, and those changes continue.
Absolutely. More in last 3.5 years, I would say. Many things have changed, but many more things are about to change. The process has been we have started the process. So very dramatic changes have been done, and many more are being done, effect of which will be seen in the coming years.
Where are those changes taking place?
See, one is our infrastructure has been very poor. One of the topics has been infrastructure. We have had major funding of infrastructure from the government side. Now we have come out with many models of getting public-private partnership. We are also making a lot of policy changes, tax policy, regulatory policies, so that infrastructure is enabled. The GST has been a big decision, and 40 taxes and cesses have been combined. The movement of goods within the country has become much easier now. Logistics is definitely a challenge. Ease of doing business, a lot of work is being done. You have seen the World Bank doing business report. We made a 30 rank jump last year, which was the highest of any country. And we have made a 42 rank jump in the last 3 years. Skill development is a major issue. So I think skill development, a lot of work needs to be done, and we have started that work.
Talking about infrastructure, and you're running a National Investment Infrastructure Fund, where are you channeling that money?
So the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund is actually India's fund for infrastructure. But in India, we like to do things collaboratively. So the idea is that while the government has put up a lot of capital into this fund, it actually has a 49% share. And we actually share that fund with other sovereign funds and pension funds from all over the world. And the idea is to then invest the money at scale, which is something that is keenly required in India, and put them into key infrastructure sectors. And I'm very pleased that our first operating company, actually, of this fund is in partnership with DP World, to build a large-scale ports and logistics platform in the country.
Sultan, we're amongst friends here, aren't we? Any time one does business in India, the potential is huge,
Absolutely.
but so are the challenges.
Yes.
Are you seeing any difference, any change yet?
Definitely. I think the ease of doing business has changed. Bureaucracy is much less. So the government, led by Prime Minister Modi, have done an amazing job in doing away with a lot of bureaucracy. But still, the big challenges, as he said, is infrastructure. So the soft problems are being managed. Policies have been better. Getting government on board to basically resolve issues is easy, but still there is a big problem with infrastructure.
What do you need more of?
Well, let me tell you, in infrastructure, India has ports, and we are the largest operator. There's no shortage of ports, but how do you get the cargo into where the consumers are? This is a challenge.
You know, if you just see the JNPT port in Mumbai, earlier there was no direct port delivery. The containers were going through a long process. Today, 33% of the containers are being given direct port delivery to the importers. Similarly, 77% of the containers are given direct port entry for the exporters. We want to make it 100%. So the operators, export-import operators are being authorized, and that process has been made much easier.
Right, but I think what Sultan's talking about is, okay, so you can build these beacons of efficiency at the port itself, the port gate. But if 20 miles down the road, the truck and the lorries get stuck in a traffic jam or a potholed road, you have effectively negated your own benefit.
So, you know, just to kind of give you a sense of what's happened is a lot of the focus on the trade side in India had been historically on the ports side. Domestic cargo movement, logistics, had not had the same degree of investment and focus. One of the things that this government has done is that it has now put logistics as one of the infrastructure sectors, which actually solves a major funding issue for the sector, because now it's able to get infrastructure type debt.
But logistics is primarily a private sector business. You'd agree?
It is, and a lot of it is being done by the private sector. And of course, the DP World and NIF platform that we are putting together is a purely commercial operation. And the idea is that we want to create a whole platform which goes all the way from the port to the destination, and thereby offers customers a much more efficient way to transport cargo from one point to the other. And we are going to put in substantial capital into this project to make sure that the facilities that we end up with are world class.
You know, if I can just chip in here, you know, after the GST was implemented from 1st July last year, all the checkposts between the different states of India are gone. The movement of truck is at least 25% faster now. Actually, even the consumption of diesel during that period has gone down by 12%. So the movement has become much faster. I agree with you. Our challenges are there, very much there. But then there are so many ways in which they are being improved now. And having this GST, removing all the checkposts, having the truck movement much faster is one of the ways. But then the paperwork, everything is being made online now. Even the electronic waybills that will be used by the transporters are all online. I think by technology-driven governance, we are reducing the paperwork, the time taken, and the costs.
There's a wonderful contradiction every time I go to India between the modernity of the Silicon Valley mentality and then all the paperwork of stamping of documents that always has to take place. You're saying that that's going?
See, in system after system, whether you apply for incorporating a company, earlier it was taking 3 weeks to start a business, incorporate a company, getting an income tax number. Now for last 1 year, it is happening in just 1 day. And now we are trying to integrate even the GST registration along with that. So a lot of these things are changing. Applying for a construction permit in a municipal corporation, earlier it was taking almost a year. Now we are bringing it down to 60 days. So those are the kind of changes being done.
Yes. You see, what he's talking about, that's the easy part. The difficult part is really getting the cargo physically to the customer. And so what we're doing with the infrastructure, the Indian Infrastructure Fund, is identifying alternative ways of getting the cargo.
Well, hang on. Look, what sort of alternative ways? I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to put it on the back of a truck and send it there.
Well, not necessarily. When you talk about logistics, you talk about a certain quantity of cargo needed at a certain time for a certain period. The question is how to transport. The usual way is trucks. And trucks sit for 10 to 15 hours in one spot because of traffic. So one of the other ways which Prime Minister Modi has opened is the Indian waterways. There are 7,000 kilometers of rivers. The Dredging Corporation of India will dredge the rivers. Most of them are navigable, but we will build special vessels that can navigate in the river, and that means we're going to take the customer. DP World also, we own our own trains, and we use our own trains to connect the cargo.
I hear this, and I think of wonderment. So I think of wonderment. You know, your own trains and your own navigable waterways. And part of me thinks it's never going to happen.
It's actually happening, Richard. So just to give you a sense, if you look at Indian cargo, about 55 to 60% of that cargo moves by road, about 25% moves by rail, and just about 5-10% is marine cargo. If you look at China, marine cargo is about 30%, and by the way, marine cargo is much cheaper than road movement. Yes. Now, there are two things happening in India which I think are going to be game changers for logistics going forward. One is that the inland waterways approach of the government, project of the government, is picking up steam. So there is actually a lot of work going on right now, including a World Bank investment to start this process. And the second thing that's happening are the two dedicated freight corridors, which are rail corridors, not just rail lines. The western corridor, which is about 1,500 kilometers, is almost done. And the eastern corridor is about 1,800 kilometers, which is going to take a little longer. But these are projects that are actually under implementation and fits into this concept that Sultan just brought up about diversifying away from road transportation to marine and more importantly, rail.
Yeah. And I can add also the Sagarmala initiative, which basically equips the small little ports around India, which are today are small and maybe not set to be used for cargo, like the dhows, how we handle in Dubai. These are many in India, and those will be basically modernized in such a way that it can also participate in transporting cargo.
So how much of the cargo going through the Indian ports is purely domestically driven, in the sense of for India, as opposed to, say, as a transshipment?
Let me tell you, one of the biggest problems is really getting the cargo to the customer. It's a big issue in India. It gets there, but it takes a long time and it delays. And so...
Right, but you just talked about navigable waterways and traffic. But then even after you've got it to the ultimate destination of city, you've then got to put it on a truck. The last mile is always...
No, let me tell you. What we are doing with the Indian Infrastructure Fund people, with our logistic specialists, we are identifying certain locations where the customer needs the cargo along the river. In certain areas where we know. Look, for example, we just signed an MOU with the Jammu and Kashmir state, where we're putting a logistic park in a place that has perishable cargo that is damaged because there's no logistics. We identify a location next to the train, and that will have specialized cold stores and cool stores so that nothing gets spoiled. This is the issue.
As Sujay pointed out, bulk of the cargo is today moving by train. But there has been very little investment in the railway infrastructure in the last 40-50 years. Result has been that the passenger trains, cargo, everything is moving on the same line. We have no dedicated freight corridor. 2 are coming up now. And in last 3.5 years, almost as much investment has been planned in railways as was done in last 65 years.
So let us say that for the purposes of this discussion, I accept every word you're saying in its entirety. Secretary, how long is it going to be before India is showing meaningful improvements? Because let's face it, if you're talking about improvement of rail structure that hasn't had investment for 45 years, that ain't going to happen in the lifespan of a one Modi administration.
See, there are a lot of things that are visible even now. There are many changes which don't need a medium and long-term result, gestation period. But there are things that are going to take time. The railways, the highways, the ports, inland waterways, logistics park, they will take. You have a certain gestation period. But there are many reforms that the government is doing, our Prime Minister is doing, like GST, that the impact is already being felt. So I think there are many reforms on the other side, the whole sector after sector.
Which raises... Go ahead.
Yeah. In continuation, for example, the deal we signed in Jammu and Kashmir, if we get the green light, immediately we start construction. We're ready. But one thing...
Who needs to give you the green light?
The state, which we're working with them now.
Are they here?
Yes.
Where
the
are
minister
they?
is there.
Are you going to give him the green light? I'm sorry? He says he's given you the green light.
2 days ago.
2 days ago. Well, hang on. He's given you the green light and you just said you'd start construction.
We can start. Actually, our engineers going to be tomorrow in Jammu and Kashmir.
Why aren't they there today? Just asking.
No, but let me tell you.
Yes.
One thing important you have to identify.
Yeah.
When you talk about logistics, you talk about costs. Everything has a cost. The most efficient, cheapest transportation mode is always by water, whether by sea or by river. Then you will get trucks and trains. Train is expensive, of course.
But they carry so much stuff.
Trains are expensive. I mean, today you hear about the Siberian Express, cargo between China to Europe, $5,000 a container. Takes 12 days. By ship it is $500, take 42 days. So if it is high value, you need it to get sooner, you do it by train. But if we allow intermodal concept, that means utilizing the best mode of transportation, rail, road, river, sea, and air, then we have given the consumer a choice. If it has to arrive tomorrow, he'll ship it the most expensive way.
But the fascinating part, Sultan, and you and I have talked about this before, DP World and Dubai operate at a 21st century level, state of the art in these things. You know, globally, you are best in class on these issues. India, on many of these things, you'd have to agree, is barely 20th century.
No, but let me correct one thing. As far as the port, DP World, we have a system. We operate 21st century in Dubai and in India. In every port around the world, the same system. The problem is, when the cargo leaves the gate,
right.
It's a different matter.
So that's your problem. Well, no, it's his problem, but it's your responsibility.
See, ports, you cannot have 20th century ports and 21st century movement of cargo. It's not possible. There's a lot of need for upgradation.
Right, but it's you that has to get it right.
But you know, I'll tell you, there's a World Bank has, you might know, a logistics performance index, which they bring out once in 2 years. In 2016, we actually made an improvement of 19 ranks in that, and that is an assessment of the foreigners who do business in India, and that concerns movement of cargo within India. So we made that improvement. Recently, we did a ranking of states on logistics performance index to set up a competition among them, make them aware of reduce. So you can see that in the short term also, as shown by this World Bank index, there is an improvement in movement of cargo, and this will actually become much more in the coming years.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, look, I mean, we are investing a large amount of capital into the infrastructure sector, and the way we want to do it is we want to combine that capital with the best expertise. Now, in some cases, that expertise comes from outside India. So one of the platforms we're doing, for example, is with DP World, and clearly we're bringing that expertise in and investing together. In another case, we are taking the expertise inside India, because there are lots of areas where the expertise in India are actually very good. And this is in the real estate sector, which is more domestic. But again, we are combining our capital with foreign capital with that kind of expertise. But I wanted to also come back, Richard, for a second to one of the things you said, which is, when is it going to happen?
Yes.
And one of the things I wanted to mention over here is that's the question that exactly makes India very exciting right now. Because when in my previous life, I used to do emerging markets investing, we used to look at three things. We used to look at the macro level. We used to look at macro stability, we used to look at growth and demographics, and we used to look at ongoing reforms. And the third point was critical. And I think the most exciting time, if things are absolutely perfect, I think it's less exciting to invest into that market than when things are actually improving. And I think that's what the story of India is right now.
So, finally, because we're out of time just about, you would agree, I think we could all agree that change is taking place, and it's not taking place probably fast enough. You'd agree?
No, I think we can definitely do faster reform, but then our Prime Minister is always in a hurry. He wants to transform the country, and we are all working hard to make his vision of New India by 2022 a reality. So we really don't want to lose any time.
I mean, in a year that I've been in India, the tax regime has changed, the FDI regime has changed, and the currency regime has changed. That's pretty fast.
I don't think we need to talk about the currency regime. I think that's one that we should perhaps best leave to another discussion in a different...
There's a lot of change.
In a different form. I think we can agree, settle on change. Are you satisfied with the amount of change?
I am hoping. The reason I'm saying I'm hoping and I'm optimistic is that Prime Minister Modi put targets for growth. They are facing a high growth. There's no way to cope with that growth and sustain it without fixing the problem that we're facing. So I know the government is serious, investing billions to make sure that the infrastructure is built. This is the thing that we really feel.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. I think you'll all agree, a robust, forthright debate on the problems and the challenges, but the opportunities facing India. Thank you very much indeed. Whilst, gentlemen, if you head off in this direction, I get ready for my next panel. I think we've got enough seats. So, here's the issue with India. While they're just changing names or whatever it is they do. Here is the issue with India. As long as I can remember, when I've been going to India, people have talked about change, reform. India has always been the land of opportunity, the place where it's always going to happen and it's always on the way. And you heard about it just then from our speakers. But now we come to the really difficult question. Will India lead the global economy in the future? Hands up if you think it will. Hands up if you think it could but probably won't. Hands up if you think there's absolutely no way. Why are you even asking the question? The one person at the back. And two people over there who clearly have got no intention of going to India anytime soon. By the way, if any of you have got any questions on this next panel, just put your hand up or stand up and we'll get a microphone to you because I really just don't want to do all the talking for the next 20 minutes. Joining me now is Shabana Kamineni, the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry. Where are you? Ah, hi. Nice to see you, ma'am. Come and sit next to me. Also, Sunil Kant Munjal, the Chairman of Hero Enterprises. Thank you. And Mr. C.P. Guranani, the Managing Director and CEO of Tech Mahindra Limited. Good to see you. All right. Let's show the audience again. How many of you think India could lead the global economy in the future? Oh, are they right? Start with you, Shabana.
So, I didn't see too many hands up there.
Exactly.
No, but the problem is your words.
Oh, that's right. Blame the question.
I do think that you know, when you ask a question like lead, it's a word of conflict. And what we should be looking at if our leaders don't manage to blow us up in the near future, then it'll be.
You're really cheerful.
No, it's a future of shared responsibility. And I think our Prime Minister said that. Shared responsibility is a much better word. Instead of saying that one will lead the other, it's, you know, that's, you're challenging them. It's a conflicting word.
Oh, that comes under the rubric of cheap shot.
It's you, Richard.
Sunil Sorry?
We were warned.
You were warned, and one thing I've learned is never tangle with Indian women. Particularly, you'll always lose in the end. Sunil, the idea, though, of the role that you see for India on the global economic stage, how would you define it?
So in my way, the answer to your first question is yes and no.
Oh, that's a typically Indian answer.
And there's a reason for it. Yes, because there is clearly areas in which India will lead, but depending on how far into the future you're asking this question, there is still work to be done. We are working on things like infrastructure, on education, on healthcare. Some of the basic needs have not reached all of India. At the top end, we've done an outstanding job. We have among some of the best healthcare systems in the world, but only at the top end. Our education system produces some of the best talent in the world. And it's the same with the economy. If you look at Indian companies at the top, they are global companies which want to stand up and be counted in the world. But there is a lot of work to be done, especially for small and mid-sized enterprises, which is the reason I said yes and no. So I think this is going to work.
So, my opinion, the future really belongs to India. And the reason being very clearly that one side, you have the world which is changing, transforming because of all the changes in technology. And if all the changes in technology are happening, and if India has that soft power, it is for us to leapfrog, it is for us to redefine healthcare, redefine education, redefine energy. I mean, you name the sector, and I think that is India's opportunity.
I agree with every word you've said. But in the 15 to 20 years that I've been going to India, I've heard it said before. And somehow at the last, and great progress has been made, but never sufficient progress to justify the amount of time and hot air that's spoken about it.
Not quite true right now, actually.
Go ahead, tell me I'm wrong.
If you see, yeah, you are. So if you see what's going on right now, so
Don't mince your words, please.
India has currently taken on some of the most ambitious infrastructure projects ever even conceived on this planet. Things like what we call the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, and there are 4 others like this one, which will connect Delhi and Mumbai through a high-speed freight corridor and develop 100 miles either side of this, including multiple smart cities coming in there as well. Mm-hmm. And these are all specialized projects. So one city will be designed around agri-products, one on high-end manufacturing, one on education. So you're kind of predefining a cluster effect. And as you know, it's been proven over and over again in the world that the clusters have the best multiplier effect. And if you look back in history, only 2 times, even the large economies like US, has just had a bump up 2 times when you created railroads, physical connectivity, and then the digital highways. India is making all of that investment today as we speak.
I agree with what Sunil and CP have said, but we have to look at the challenges that we have and the rest of the world has. If you look in, most of the world has stopped growing. The world population will even out at about 8.5 billion people, and India will still be growing a decade after other countries have stopped, which means in the foreseeable future, in the next 20, 25 years, about 40% of people under the age of 30 will be Indians. So I think that is a shared world responsibility that we do have to educate them. We have to keep them healthy. More than anything, we have to provide jobs. And this is where it comes from, that we have to think rural, we have to think urban, and all this hot air has to, the reason that it's urgent for us, but it doesn't look to the rest of the world, is because really we are a supermax ship. 1.2 billion people, it's not easy to see results that you can of, places, city-states that I've been to, with this. You can see the results, palpably within a decade. In India, it takes a generation. And maybe for us, it's taking 2 generations.
Right, but CPU, how do you ensure that the improvements, or at least the move forward, continues and doesn't get stymied by bureaucratic infrastructure obstacles, that government continues the promises that it's made?
I think, Richard, I can only say when you spoke about the last 20 years, I would like to say one of the things that has changed in the last few years is the goal congruence. The goal of, so I'll give you an example. There was a white paper released about 2 months ago, which said, can India create for itself a $1 trillion digital economy? Now, that white paper was released by a close collaboration between government, between academia. In India, very rarely, academia has participated in that kind of a thought leadership, and the industry. So my personal opinion is that this is one time when India is literally firing on all 16 cylinders. And it is not just, we are seeing the upliftment in the rural economy, we are seeing in the soft powers, which is knowledge-based economy, and we are also seeing digital as well as the manufacturing all working together.
Also, if you see, in the last 20 or 30 years, we've had every kind of political party in government, extreme left, extreme right, and every color in between. The direction has not changed. There is a common understanding now amongst leaders in India that the only answer we have available is growth, and our biggest challenge, the biggest challenges offer some of the biggest opportunities. So the big challenges were lack of physical infrastructure, too much red tape and bureaucracy, corruption in the system.
Right. But if you're right, and we've already heard from the previous panel, from the Secretary and the Fund, that infrastructure is being addressed, and the Secretary talked about the amount of red tape that is being gotten rid of, then pretty soon those cylinders that you've just referred to should not only be firing, they should be turbocharged, are they?
They are. If you see it, we've been growing at 7+ for several years now. The possibility is to take it to 8. Actually, the opportunities exist that we will continue to be the fastest growing country for, I think, the next 10, 15, 20 years. And those opportunities are there. Adding to what Sunil said, it's not just about the collective of India, but it's also the states that are firing those cylinders, and they're competitively challenging each other to do better.
Questions? Anybody? Questions from our guests in front of us on India's role in the 21st century? Raise your hand if you've got a. Yes, sir. You're at the front. Well, do you have a microphone? Well, go on. You shout your question and I'll... Hang on. Oh, we've got a microphone on its way to you. Right.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Nadeem, and I'm representing one of the experiences in the edge of the government beside this chamber hall. My question is that we have been trying to expand in terms of sustainability in various countries. We deploy noise sensors on blockchain technology. Our partners and our co-founders are from different countries. I'm the Indian member in the team, but when we talk about deploying this kind of technology in India, the mindset and the reception I get is, no, let's take that later. Currently, we are doing a pilot in Netherlands. We're planning to do in Dubai. So the question is, where are the right channels to approach for startups and innovative companies like us in the Indian and it's directly related to cryptocurrency and economy because the customers are paid in real time.
Right.
So what's the right
So,
channel to approach?
This government actually started a cell under Ramesh Abhishek. It's called Invest India. They have a complete setup there in Delhi to talk about startups, because we do believe we'll be the largest startup nation in the world. It's not just that we have to find jobs and opportunities for so many Indians, and a lot of it will come from startups. So please get to Invest India. You can Google it, and you'll find that they'll handhold you right through.
Have you tried, Have you tried them?
Not yet. So we are already,
the
just for your
people
information, we are already the third largest startup nation in the world and growing quite rapidly. These are actual numbers right now. That's available if you check these out. And Shobna's right, there are plenty of opportunities right now to get in there and both look for funding and look for opportunities. There's no guarantee that you'll get it, which is true anyway.
I don't think anybody doubts.
Yeah.
I certainly, in all my visits CP to India over many years, nobody doubts the entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, somebody will find a way to make a market or sell something in India like no other nation on earth. I guess the question is, they often seem to succeed in spite of the regulations and of the obstacles. It's just very difficult to do it, to succeed.
Again, and we are not denying it. When it came to ease of doing business, we moved up the notches, but we are not the easiest nation to do business with. So we all realize it. Having moved that many notches only tells you that India is determined to become more global and an easier business community. Number two is, just to give an example, it is not only Invest India. The environment clearly recognizes that if we have to create jobs that we have to create for our youth, then we need to encourage entrepreneurship even more. So currently there is no college, there is no management school in which there is no entrepreneurship cell.
Right. You just said we have a question. Yes. Hang on, we'll get you a microphone.
Hello.
Hello.
Strategies to use emerging technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence for development, and how to achieve this between business and government.
What's the problem?
Business tends to lag, and there's a tension between enabling innovation but regulating it, particularly, for example, with artificial intelligence, which can have downside risks for security and privacy, and how India can specifically leverage these for development in a cooperative method.
And not only is the government thinking about it, but all of us in private enterprise are thinking about it. And for us, we're doing it at an unprecedented scale. Just to give you a point case in point, we're in the healthcare industry. And no other healthcare enterprise in the world has every piece, from health insurance right up to the last mile delivery. We're bringing all that together and applying analytics, and everyone in the world is looking at what we're doing. And I think this will happen in many cases where every industry in India will come together, because we Indians actually understand technology. We leapfrog over computers to mobiles.
But it would be a shame if, having gained such a huge benefit on that first digital revolution, India did not build on its lead with AI and blockchain revolution.
It's happening rapidly.
So the work is on already actually.
Go ahead.
I think, again, to take things in context, one is, take into account India is the consumption-led society. Number two, take into context is, it is not artificial intelligence, it is the enhanced or the extra intelligence that you bring in. Now, if I have to use the current social norms and what is available. There is nowhere in the world, whether it is a bank or a healthcare or an education, where this technology is being deployed, including Dubai, where India Incorporated is not involved. India Incorporated is part of that change. India Incorporated is more than often leading the development of the technology, and more than anyone else, I think India Incorporated, I mean, you would hear
CP,
it from the government.
But to be fair to the question,
the trump card in that is that you must understand that India is actually the most open economy. Here's an economy where Google will play with 10 cent, and we allow everything in there. So I do think that in future, India will also be the great modeling ground of how e-commerce or any of these blockchain technologies can take.
Well, we don't want to overstate how open India is. There are many parts of the Indian economy that are not.
No, I would agree. That's the point I was going to make. To be fair to the question, there is a lot of work to be done. At this moment, we are behind, and I think we've begun to recognize that. Earlier, we were almost blind to the fact, or at least we wouldn't acknowledge we're behind. It is clear that there's work to be done, and that's why this becomes an interesting opportunity. Both the realization and seeing how this gap is clear, and how Indian entities are going and doing this overseas for other countries and other countries. So it's a real opportunity out there.
Sunil, the impact all over the world is only beginning. So I don't think India is really behind. It is just that, for example, in manufacturing sector, when you're doing Industry 4.0, I think what you would see in Hero Motors or Mahindra, the automation of the factories is almost at par with the Japanese or the Americans.
Yeah, we're probably a little ahead compared to many of them, actually.
So why is the perception otherwise?
So we are very poor communicators. So this is actually one of our problems. We've not communicated well the kind of program that's been on in India for the last some years now, that there's a transformational set of initiatives going on. And we've done a lousy job of telling the world about this, actually.
Do you agree?
I don't know whether it is only poor communication. Let's also again remember India is that same 1.25 billion people. Now, Indian government is also those 29 states. India is 450 cities. Those mayors they work at a different pace. So, I mean, to categorize India as one homogeneous mass, I think is the biggest difficulty.
The definition of success is very different in India because of the scale.
Right, so finish off with that. Let's finish off with that. No, don't get up yet. CP, what is your definition of success for India?
I mean, our Prime Minister says he is of living. You may say he is of business. But relatively, I think if we are able to cover the untapped 500 million people, I think that would be success for India. There is a lot more work to make it inclusive. There is a lot more work that needs to be done to bring those cities and the blocks and the rural towns into mainstream.
Your definition of success?
68% of India lives in the rural areas. 54% depends on agriculture as a primary source of income. If the rural economy can become more dynamic, India would be an engine firing not on 4, but on multiple engines. And this would be a bigger growth market than all of Europe put together and North America put together, but at a completely different price line.
No pressure, you get the last word. You mentioned success, your definition of success.
It's easier for me because I'll ride on both theirs, which I totally agree. But I also think that India, at this point of time, also needs to play the world game. So we need to be responsible enough to be able to take more of this.
Hang on.
So we'll
play the world game.
We have to be open.
But you just started our discussion by saying you don't want to lead.
It's shared. So India will work with the rest of the world. That's why we open up our economy. But we do expect that as we import, we will be allowed to export and create those markets. So I think that jobs will depend on that. I think that the ability to bring in education and healthcare from all parts of the world and good things to ride on exactly what both of them said, because India will continue to be the world's most exciting market. And I think that itself will create the future.
India continues to be the world's exciting market. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.